Hi, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome behind the couch, you guys. Hi, Dr.
God,
Scott. How you
hey, Dr.
doing?
Shiloh. It seems like forever. Seems
Forever.
like
I
it's been just
know.
forever.
I
Yeah.
I feel like since
Um,
we're doing these once a month and it's kind of like wonky in between, it feels like sometimes we just did one, but yeah, it seems like forever since I saw
it
you
does feel
last.
this one. Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for everybody for showing up. I know we have usually some late drop-ins. But for those of you that are watching right now, just a reminder, we have a live meetup this week in LA this coming Friday, April 11th at Bike Shed in downtown Los Angeles. So we'll have all the details on social media. And to those of you that were listening to this in May, we hope you enjoyed the meetup, or sorry you didn't make it, because sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get these posted.
Well, this
Yeah,
will drop in our regular audio feed in May.
right.
So, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we've been planning that. We've also been doing some other guest spots lately, so please go watch us over on Defense Diaries YouTube channel. We talked about the Zizians cult. I'm going to drop that link in the chat right now. That was super interesting. We do cover that in our in the news behind the couch, which is the last one we did, but that was just a quick little bite. This one, we really kind of get into it a little bit more with Bob and Allie. Also recently, so I was just a guest on Truth and Justice. Bob Ruff and I discussed the longer video segment that came out on Bridge Guy in the Delphi case. So did a little behavioral analysis and talked about that and kind of just our thoughts without getting too deep, without um, kind of hypothesizing too much, just kind of looking at it for what it was right after it was released. And then next week, I am going to be on the 300th episode of Tennis Podcast when it drops. So they have their big 300th episode. Like we just did our 200th. I can't
I
even,
know.
I
I
can't.
know. They got a little bit of a head start on us, though. So there's that.
No, they just publish every single week.
Okay.
So,
Well, there you
but I
go.
think
Damn
we
it.
we started around the same year or so. But man, Nick is like a one-man show over there.
That's great. So I also completely forgot that our dear friend Josh Hallmark from True Crime Bullshit and Unsafe Spaces is releasing the follow-ups now to Unsafe Spaces and is
Cool.
utilizing a very extensive interview that we had together. Gosh, going on about a year and a half, 2 years ago. It feels
Yeah.
like maybe it's only a year. But that's a really fascinating and horrifying case of serial killers in Florida within the gay BDSM community. So please check that out. I think, as always, I'm just a huge fan of Josh's work, and he always offers us such respect for our work that we do in our clinical work and our forensic work. So I really feel like I had a lot to offer there. And then also, just out of the blue, about a month ago, I got a great opportunity to be interviewed for an article by Alexandra Paul, who is, as most people will know, or most people my age would know, was a star on the original Baywatch series. And Alexandra is, first of all, just an absolutely stellar, wonderful human being who went through an absolutely horrific
Yeah.
incidents of stalking from a completely delusional fan over a period of 13 years. It severely impacted her life, her husband, her family, her elderly mother. It really is just one of the best worst examples of why we need stronger stalking laws here in the United States. Shiloh's going to put up a link to that. It's an
Yep.
online zine called The Ankler. Um, and please go read it. Please, not just for my own self edification, but please distribute this article. I think every woman needs to read this article about being stalked by somebody that's not a guy. It's
Yep.
really important. That can
Yeah.
happen.
It's a fantastic article and good for her for writing that when she felt like she was ready
Yeah.
to really put her voice to it. And cites you're in an article with Reed Malloy. Reed Malloy, our Saint Reed Malloy forensic psychologist also gets cited in it. So I mean, it's kind of like you guys are besties. No. Oh my goodness. Okay, so lastly here in our housekeeping, before we bring on our guest, of course, our new Patreons. So since we were on here last, we have at the associate level, we have Sarah M, and we have Shay D. The last initial is D. I don't think that is meaning shady, but I wanted to
But it's pretty cool if it is, yeah.
it is very cool to have that name with that initial. And then at the intern level, Cameron B, thank you guys so very much for being part of our Patreon family. Don't forget that if you join at the doctoral level, you are entered into a merch giveaway every single month. It restarts in January. So if you win, we pull your name off and then, spin the wheel each consecutive month. But January starts all over. Everybody gets put back in the pool. So for February, we have Teresa R. She was our winner. She has actually received her goodies today. I sent her some stuff after going back and forth with her. And then for March, Jessica W, which Jessica, if you're listening, check your Patreon messages because you actually won 2 years ago and you never got back to us. So you've won twice in 2 years. Those are pretty good odds, I think it goes to say, of folks who we are pulling from in the giveaway. But Jessica W, if that's you, reach out to us. We emailed you. I want to make sure we get you something, whether it's a piece of merch or just something fun that you're okay with us sending you a little surprise that we do that. And I want to make sure your address is still correct. So little treats for our devoted Patreon members.
Which we are so thankful for.
Always. Oh,
And
yeah.
on to the main event
Main
today.
event.
We are
Yes.
joined by Michael Bayer, founder of True Case Files and the director of the new 3-part true crime documentary Vanished: The Heather Elvis Case. Michael brings over 12 years of experience in video production, having worked on everything from commercials and explainer videos to emotionally powerful documentaries. And after stepping away from production to help grow his brother's criminal defense law firm, Michael gained firsthand insight into the world of criminal investigations, legal strategy, and the psychological complexity of the justice system. So now he's combining his production expertise with his legal knowledge to tell real stories with depth and impact. And that certainly is the case in Vanished: The Heather Elvis Case. That not only explores the mystery around her disappearance, but also examines the powerful, sometimes dangerous, and overwhelmingly crazy trajectory that this case takes, mainly due to social media and
Mm,
how that is starting to play a role in criminal cases. Very, very valuable to see in this way in today's world. Through this project, Michael and his team really aim to raise awareness around online harassment and spotlight the ongoing pursuit of justice for Heather and her family. So welcome, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
yeah, no problem. Great to see you again. I know it
Yeah,
was
yeah, thanks.
very brief at the screening.
Thanks for
But
calling.
yeah, I'm glad we could make it happen. Thank you for the invite. And it's great to do a follow-up like this. Hearing about your background is just so nice. I mean, obviously, Scott and I appreciate it when professionals in criminal justice and adjacent fields then get into content creation. And that really is, I think, an evolution that we've seen in true crime, and the consumers seem to be pretty appreciative of that. So I don't know if you found that that background seems to have some, bona fides with it, and that people understand that. But it's just, from our point of view, it's been really valuable in this space.
I mean, I agree. I think without the background, I'd probably be almost impossible to uh, tell that story. You really have to have a good understanding of how criminal psychology works, how trials work, the
Mhm.
presentation of it, the motives behind the crime. So those are things that I really think were key in being able to tell the story the way I was able to. Without that
Great. Yeah.
experience, impossible. Really.
Well, many have tried and done it. And it's, it'll get into more of our conversation of what kind of sets us apart. I do want to give a very brief overview of Heather's case to the audience in case they are not familiar with it. before we kind of jump into your journey about creating this docuseries, and just a taste, because of course we want people to go and watch this after hearing this. But Heather Elvis was a 20-year-old cosmetology student and restaurant server who disappeared on December 18th, 2013. So this was following a first date, which sounds suspicious. But the homicide portion of her case remains open. Now, the investigation led to the arrests of Sydney Moore, who Heather was in a relationship with, not that person she went on the first date with. He was arrested for obstruction, kidnapping, and his wife, Tammy Moore, was also arrested for conspiracy and kidnapping. And these two are something. I mean, Scott and I have talked about a lot of characters in true crime documentaries that we have reviewed over the years, but man, I mean, I think they might be up there and take the cake as far as, again, I'll just say characters. We don't psychoanalyze people we have not met in real life. So, but throughout the proceedings of this court case, again, social media played a significant role in really shaping public perception, which we're seeing more and more of all the time. The conflicting narratives, the online trolling component, which Scott and I have covered, the psychology of that for sure. And, specifically these posts made by Tammy and her supporters, and how that ended up kind of twisting things, portraying Heather as a stalker and kind of fueling the controversy that impacted, yes, the investigation, but also, of course, families that have to live with this forever. So with that, yeah, let's talk about the case a little bit.
Yeah, I think you hit you hit it on the head exactly. The thing about the case that interesting characters involved in it. And I think that is something that drew me to it as well. I think in the Q&A, Allison asked, what was one main thing that, kind of got your attention with this case? And I think the handcuffing to the bed was just very abnormal behavior, something you don't see every day. And the tattoo on his lower stomach, it makes you want to dig in and learn more about their relationship and what type of people they are. So I found that part interesting. Also, I think when you also dig deeper into the story, which we did more than we had more time. So it was a 3-part docuseries. So Dateline I think Dateline did 2 segments on it. Investigation did 1. They weren't able to dig deeper into the relationship between them, and even father and the sister and the sister's boyfriend and all these other people that along the way, helping clean the truck, the videos and all this. So a lot more of the evidence we're able to get into, and it just shows that the dynamics of the personalities of these people involved in the crime. So I thought it was very interesting from a psychological standpoint for sure.
Well, definitely the development that you're able to create over your 3 episodes. Each one stands alone distinctly with its own particular focus, which is a really great concept. I don't know if that was intended. But it really worked. It worked for me as, for someone who works in this area, and also as a viewer, just a participant, with a bag of popcorn. Like, it was that engaging. And, for those who have not had the opportunity to see it yet, episode 1 really focuses on Heather herself, her background, her personality, her, coming of age, challenges as a teenager, right into this event sledding into her disappearance. So that made me wonder as we were sitting watching, and thank you very much for inviting us to the event and to the premiere. But that helps me generate this first question. What initially drew you to Heather's case? And what about this particular case made it feel important to you to revisit now over a decade later?
The online harassment aspect of it was what originally drew me through. I personally went through kind of a very, very minor like situation around like 2016. It was a family member, kind of had one of these character type people who use social media in a negative way. It was the first time I ever seen social media or Facebook being used this way. Just being able to start rumors that weren't true, and how people were contacting me. Hey, did you say this about me? Say that about me? I was just like what? And I used to have no privacy settings on my Facebook account. Didn't
Oh,
think anything of it. Didn't think anything of
Yeah.
it. If you want to be my
Yeah.
friend, who cares? I didn't see any danger of it. I think when social media first started, a lot of people were like, this is something that just throw your stuff out there, put all your information out there and whatever. I mean, there's no harm behind it. That was the first time I was like, wow, like this can really be used as a dangerous weapon. And at the time I was working with my brother and I had an experience in production. I said, I wouldn't mind making a documentary about this topic, cyber stalking. So I was going to make originally, I was going to make a documentary just about online harassment, cyber stalking, people who use the internet and social media in negative ways. Then I was looking for different examples of it, and I came across this story. When I came across the
Oh,
story, I looked and watched into it, and I was like, wow. And then I saw the whole thing about Tammy and the handcuffing, and then you just draw in. And then I was like, okay, go all the way back. This crime isn't solved yet. She's still missing. So really it grabbed my attention. Maybe we can, bring awareness to it. There's the whole online harassment part. I can maybe mesh these two things together. I'm sure, I thought to myself, I'm sure the family would want to shine light on this story. And that online harassment part wasn't told. I just found it all online, but I watched it. Then I did a little further investigation. I watched the Dateline episodes. I watched the investigation discovery episode. No one talks about this. And I was like, this is probably one of the main parts of this story. I want to do this. And I think it's also going to help the case. It's a topic you can tell a story through a story type deal.
so you actually even covered question 1 and question 2. Thank you for I don't know if you didn't intend to do it, but that's great. I really am so glad that you focused on the phenomenon of trolling. And Shiloh and I did a deep dive in one of our episodes into this phenomenon and why it's continuing to explode. And one of the things that we both, we didn't get a chance to talk about it as much as the actions itself by people who perpetrate it, but the frustration on our part in, and this is not victim shaming at all, but it's the idea that we would hope in today's world that most people would know to turn on their privacy settings, and yet people still don't. It's been 15 years since this all exploded and people still don't. And it's also sort of sobering to see that not only are there some really bad actors out there are some people out there that are expressing their inner rage, their inner frustration, and taking it out, behind the safety of the keyboard. But we also have people that are not critically thinking about it, right? Like they're not thinking about, is this true or not? So in the case that you're presenting, people can hop on Tammy's bandwagon and just absolutely, help her become this avalanche of trolling that occurred. So I'm really, really glad that you focused on that. Thank you.
yeah, and Scott and I have seen, I think what you highlighted, not just the trolling and how, they kind of weaponized it, the suspects essentially kind of weaponized that to try and create their own narrative. But I mean, really, we're talking about like this leading to some real life horrific events for the family, which we have seen with other survivors and family members of victims, where we're talking probably they were shot at, that they're being chased and stalked themselves. Really moments where just unbelievable things unfold, especially like in episode 2, where you're really covering what that led to. That is completely uh, distracting them from the fact that they're still looking for their daughter.
Right. And the stalking started online, but it came to offline as well. And
Yeah.
I didn't really know much into these stories until I started talking to Debbie Elvis, the family members, Morgan and Terry, and
Okay.
they were like, no, it wasn't just online harassment. This turned into in-person stalking.
Mm.
And it was just in talking to them, how can you imagine going through a situation where you think everybody's going to want to help you to find your daughter, and now you have these random people who think you did it and are going out of their way to harass you in person?
Yeah.
You know, it's just it's eye-openingly shocking, and people are starting to really realize the internet when you start getting it's like bullying almost or I don't know how to what word to say, but people
Yeah.
get on these the idea, then the group gets the whole group piles
Yes.
onto it, and then they become they get their own status in the group, and
Mhm.
so and this can snowball up to the point where people are shooting at you or harassing you in person just to get a little higher up in that little group that's online, and these people find themselves they find their little group this way, and
Yes.
I'm guessing, and when I heard the story deeper and deeper, I mean, a lot of these people are just random people. You know, yes, Tammy Moore was a person that was spearheading this. There were other people that were leaders of the group, but these other followers just jump on, and it's like a cult almost.
Well, I'm really glad you said that. I think you actually are making a really good point because one of the things for people that are on the outside of cults, can look in on maybe a cult or, a cult-ish type behavior or organization that a family member or a friend has fallen into. And when you have that distance, you can look at the leaders of it and you can go, what the hell? Like, this person's crazy. Why are you listening to them? And, all without going into diagnostic criteria, Tammy and her husband are odd characters, and that's being kind to put it.
Right.
They're both clearly like every basic sort of boundary of lying is totally transgressed every time they open their mouths. They're strange in the way they interact. They're defensive in the way they answer questions. And so the idea that they would have such a following and such a defensive following in their online supporters is really a big part of this story. So yeah, I like how you dipped into that in the second episode. I think it was a really important part of this narrative.
Yeah, and another thing is when I was talking to Debbie, it was difficult when we're interviewing her to really grasp the whole picture because okay, you have Tammy, you have Sydney, and then you have all these trolls.
Mhm.
What's the motivation behind the trolls? I kept thinking to myself, where's the connection here? Why are these people wanting to help out these other people? And then I looked more into it. There are people out there who just they get this is their group, and they think
Yeah.
some of them think they're doing good. They're cracking the case.
Yes.
They think
Yes.
that Terry's
Sense of
doing
power
this.
from that.
Right,
Yeah.
right, that they're the ones who are figuring out a conspiracy that no one else knows, and it's wild how this whole and Tammy does have that personality of being a leader, and she's a strong personality, and she was, very manipulative, you could say, and you could see how she was using sock puppet accounts and other things to be able to draw people in. Not a very intelligent person,
Mhm.
or not dumb at all. And
No, 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 not at all.
right,
Very, very
very
it
intelligent, right,
and
very
very
intelligent.
much all these elements of coercive control in her
Right,
relationship with
exactly,
Sydney,
right.
the
Oh,
manipulation, the tattooing is I mean, I remember Shiloh and I, like other members of the audience, there was
Explain
a
it, Scott, for the audience that hasn't heard of this about
oh,
the
explain it, yeah.
tattooing.
oh my gosh, so sorry, I got in like, this is why, like, I forget, and I think I'm sitting across the table from Michael. So, in the first episode of this series, what you find out, amongst all the other oddities and strange dynamics within the relationship between Tammy and Sydney, is that she believes that he's having an affair, and so she really ramps up some behaviors that are very much, within the realm of coercive control, um, dominating behaviors, really emotional abuse. And Sydney, for whatever is going on in his personality, goes along with it. And one of the things you find out is as a member of the audience is that at one point she sleeps with him handcuffed to the bed, and he admits to it, and later in the trial she denies it, but then it moves on from that to she demands in retribution for him having this alleged affair, uh, that he get a tattoo in big, sort of English Gothic letters across his lower abdomen, almost like a gang sign, but it's
Okay.
her name across his lower abdomen. It's also an awful tattoo. And so it's and I don't say that for humor's sake, although it is kind of funny, but there was a really uncomfortable reaction in the audience when that flashes up on the screen, and there's a, excuse my language, there's a what the fuck moment and a real funeral giggle that went through the audience because it's so crazy that someone would demand this of their partner and then that the partner would agree with it, which I think speaks to just how intelligently manipulative she was in that relationship.
How much control she had.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did that
Absolutely.
surprise you when there was, like, laughter when that image came up on the screen, and what did you I'm just curious, like, were you expecting that at all?
Right. I don't think people were laughing and like thinking like I think Scott said it best. It was it's not humor
Funeral
and
giggles. It's
right.
Like a
like
It's
defense
like an
discomfort.
mechanism.
uncomfortable laugh type.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Like it's like wow. It same with the handcuffing. It's funny, but it's funny in a really weird, strange way. It's
yeah,
almost like it's bizarre. I think
Yeah.
bizarre is the word to use. Bizarre.
yeah,
You don't see that all the
definitely.
time. You do not
You
see it all
know
the time.
No, no, and I'm just thinking, Scott and I, for a couple of years, once a month, we would review a true crime documentary and do an episode on it, and this couple does give me vibes of the Natalia Grace parents, right? Like, the very domineering, manipulative woman, the mom, and then the just very bizarre presenting dad. And I don't know, you really get that from what we are able to see, and then what you were able to pull into the documentary through footage, TV interviews, news interviews, of course the trials, and then through the reenactments as well. Just
Right.
how there probably is a lot of fear built into Sydney, like saying, why would he go through with getting this tattoo? Well, maybe she made it so he didn't have a whole lot of a choice there.
Right.
You mentioned, obviously sitting down and talking with Heather's parents and sister and friends. Tell us what that was like to come in as a filmmaker and start building a rapport with them. I mean, you can tell, especially, I don't know. I mean, there's a real hesitance to them, obviously, through everything they've been through. And the dad just seems like he would be a tough nut to crack. I mean, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and, God bless both of them. But what was that like to come in and say, "Here's my idea. Trust me to tell your daughter's story"?
It was difficult. I think anytime anybody goes through a situation like they did, they're going to be guarded.
Mm,
It takes time, it takes trust. Summer Dash was another producer on this, and she had a prior relationship with them because she was a local reporter. So she's the one who approached them. As for being comfortable with me, it took them time. Now we're like friends. So, really, and any follow-up interviews, I told Debbie, anything you need, I just want to help. But it takes time because they don't know who I am. This is was my first true crime documentary,
yeah,
and they didn't know what story I wanted to tell. They were always guarded a lot because of the situation they had with all the conspiracy theories and everything that happened on social media. They didn't know what angle I came from. I think having Summer and Jimmy Richardson, the solicitor, he was the first one to kind of get on board and say, "Hey, look, this Mike's going to do a good job." And I think after I had that, it slowly they started to feel more comfortable. But another thing about making a good documentary and interviewing someone, as you guys know, it takes a while to build trust and to get them to open up about their story. It's not something where you just throw a camera on someone's face and say, "Okay, what happened here, 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 here." They have to get to trust you and be open, and that's a very important part of making these type of documentaries. And these stories are this isn't about opening up about, "Hey, what do you think about the economy?" or, "Oh, tell me about your job history." I mean, this is something that they lost their daughter. She's still missing. So it was
Yeah.
it was something they had to feel comfortable with, but it took a while. It took time.
So, can you kind of lead us through your process on like in a practical way about how you navigated this? The narrative style dives into both the emotional impact and the legal details. How do you as a producer work with your colleagues and, your creative team to balance these two storytelling elements?
That's a good question, and a lot of times, every filmmaker is gonna have a different style. So, some filmmakers concentrate more on facts and timeline and, they or whatever part, maybe evidence they like, or they want mystery or who did it. That's a huge storyline that's very, very popular. My style is more I like to mix I like to mix the facts part, but I do like to concentrate a lot on the emotional part, the relationships between people part, the psychology part. I think is very, very interesting. Showing the character. You do need the facts, always need the facts. I mean, people want to know what happened. Also, I like to skip around in the timeline in order to keep people's attention, show them something, move them back, move them forward. I'm not saying all documentaries are going to be made like that, but I like that style. But as for setting it up, you because I've seen where you have footage or you have everything together, and then someone could cut that up, and it's a completely different movie than if another person did. I think one thing that's very important when making a documentary or a movie in general is don't put too much information in there
Mm,
and make people feel something. I think you have
yeah.
to make people feel something, and that's something that people always want to tell information. Well, they have to know everything. If they don't know this part, they don't know this part, they're not going to understand the story. Because if you noticed, one thing that I skipped over, and I spoke to Debbie Elvis about this. She goes, "Wow." She goes, "You did a really good job of telling the story in regards to what you put in and what you kept out, because even at the trial there was so much stuff the prosecutors had a hard time with that." She's like, "I'm going to show Nancy live saying these people, you did a really good job. They're going to be shocked to see how what you kept in, what you kept out." For example, the first trial for Sydney Moore was a mistrial. I could have spent 10 minutes on that. I had it just as one line. When I was first editing the movie, I did have all that stuff in there, and I was scratching my head. I'm like, God, this really slows it down. It confuses people. Like, well, there's one trial, there's two trials. People don't understand a mistrial. They really don't get, it's just it could really just stop the movie right there, slow
Yeah.
everything down. So I'm just going to put one sentence as a mistrial. And then now we have two trials. So Tammy and Sydney, but they use the same evidence. How do you do that? If I was to do one trial and then another trial and tell the same, like, that was very difficult to navigate. So I said, let's just combine them together, take the key moments from both of them because it's the same evidence, and just move them across the timeline. I think it worked, but other people could cut that apart, and they could have spent 10 minutes on that first trial and then in a mistrial. But I think you'd have confused people. So you
Yeah.
have to keep people's interest and not give them too much information.
Well, thank you for that creative choice because I think a lot of
There's a lot
times
in
when
there.
Scott and I have covered documentaries, we're like, there is too much trial stuff in here.
Right,
Yes, is how important is it? Of course. And then,
right.
you have Tammy getting on the stand and that is such a shit show that you have to put
You
that in
have to
there
be
because
that's
But
entertainment.
and important too, because it
super,
really,
yeah,
in the way
Right,
she shows the audience who she is as well as the jury. I mean, it is
right.
just it was some
absolutely.
really good filmmaking with her as your
She
main
she did a
character.
great job, yeah, I mean, she
Yeah.
really showed her it's hard to hide. If you ever sit down in a court, when I went to Horry County Courthouse, I sat down in the same chair that because Jimmy Richardson let us shoot in there. So I sat
Nice.
down in that same chair and I looked at the jury and I go, God, it would be very, very difficult to sit here and look at these 12 people all in the face and try to lie to them and gaslight them. It's an amazing justice system that we have where they can just you're on trial. You're sitting
Yep.
in front of these people and you have to explain yourself. So,
Yeah, interesting choice for them to put her on the stand, and certainly she,
oh,
sank her own ship, but,
right.
so I applaud that choice, definitely. I wanna ask you just in that vein, another thing Scott and I kind of look at is the ethics behind, the considerations given when making a documentary, and of course, we're talking to you, so we get to ask you that question. We don't always
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
but, a lot you said you want the audience to feel something, and so often, I think we have talked about watching a documentary and feeling gross afterwards, feeling like it was more exploitative, like the cameras were kept on a little too long when people started to get uncomfortable. And, another friend of ours, Lenora Claire, who does some consulting in the victim advocacy space, has really advocated like having people on set to be a go between to say, like, so and so needs a break or what have you. How did you kind of, think about going into that in terms of working with people that were in such a vulnerable state, yet, of course, wanting to hear from them because that's a hard thing to balance, but as just curious of your comments or thoughts on that as a filmmaker.
I think it's very important to look at the point of view coming from the victim in regards to how you tell the story. A lot of people, again, they're trying to make entertainment out of something, and for example, we could have made started the movie out making it look like Terry was involved or something, or just to keep people's attention, then have a huge
Yeah.
twist and turn, and then he's not. But yet, you could do things that make it a little more entertaining. But now you're twisting things up. You're omitting information. There's things in there where you could put in the movie to make it like the part where they're describing Heather or anything like that, making it more gruesome. You can put
Mhm.
more stuff like that. So, for example, in our reenactments, we didn't have anything showing Heather being killed or murdered or
No.
anything, and that's something that I would not want to put in there because I wouldn't want the victims to have to watch that. So
Good.
I do think about the victims in regards to what their feelings about the whole thing too. You want people to feel, but you also have to look at them and say, hey, look, do they want this out there and everyone to see their family member in that way? So
Well, and look, I mean, I think it's a testament to it doesn't need that stuff, right? It doesn't
right,
need
right,
the gruesome crime scene
right,
photos, even the
right.
descriptions, or even, the reenactments as well. So, what a testament to be able to getting the story out there, making people feel something without also having to like throw the red herrings in there, right? So you're like, oh
Right.
my gosh. And with a
Well,
three-parter, I mean, that's easily digestible too.
Exactly.
Scott?
I'm so glad that you shared that about the sort of your choice not to engage in a bait and switch, because that really is a technique that seems to be used a lot because this is just such a prolific genre at the moment. All of the big names are recycling shows from 20 years ago when this started, Dateline, all of those. They're bringing maybe some new information in, but in today's world with the challenges that you're talking about with social media, that's kind of the problem when you do a bait and switch. If you're going to build something up as a possibility, that creator, whether they mean to or not, is feeding the flame of what ifs and conspiracy theories.
Right.
And
Right.
you've now just built up a case and one line of saying, but he was proved innocent by a blood test. And now we're on. It's
Mhm.
like, well, wait, you just built this up for 10 minutes and now you're going to dismiss it with literally 3 words. The audience, you've already planted the seed. You can't unplant that seed in a listener's mind. So I love that you have this approach. I think that is just a lot more ethical in an approach.
Yeah, and not every movie has to be or not every crime documentary has to be who did it. I think they got popular in the Netflix. I mean, especially now, Netflix. I mean, it seems to be a lot of their true crime documentaries follow that storyline. It's popular. I mean, I like them too. I mean, they're interesting. But I remember watching one. Was I think it was What About Jennifer or something, and
Mm,
they had you wondering who it was, and it got to the end, but all they did was check her phone. I mean, it wasn't like a huge mystery. I mean, there are a
right.
few of them that were really really good. I will say where there's like huge twists and turns, and where they falsely accuse someone and they find out that person didn't do it. So I mean, that storyline works, but to try to make that storyline out of where it doesn't belong, I mean, there's other storylines in this documentary. I think the storyline was good versus evil. I saw
Mm,
I saw a huge conflict between the victims and the perpetrators, and the conflict didn't just go between Tammy and Heather. It went between Tammy, the whole Moore family, or I'm sorry, the whole Moores, and then the Casons too, and and the Elvis family. So there was a huge conflict that naturally keeps your attention because it's just going back and forth. And then the prosecutor comes in at the end and wins. I don't want to ruin I don't want to ruin everything. But then you have the ending, so you had the resolution. It had a natural story of good and evil too, is what I saw after I watched all the trials and listened to all the interviews. And that's the storyline that I saw stuck out the most to me. So that's what I went with.
That makes a lot of sense.
I found something. I remember watching the third episode and thinking there was something that was happening. I don't want to give, again, like you, I don't want to give away too much of this, but I just
Right.
want to encourage everyone to please go watch this as soon as you can, because as you're listening to Tammy be deposed, I got really surprised that she was allowed to talk the way that she was. She was constantly interrupting. I mean, the defensiveness, I get that's going to happen in a trial. But there was one physical thing that punched me as a forensic psychologist, that just punched me in the gut, and what to me was so telling is the way she kept turning to the jury to explain. And it was so reminiscent of Amber Heard during Amber Heard's trial, where it's like, I've got an audience, so I'm going to change my focus and I'm going to explain to you, this attorney's not giving me any respect, but I'm going to play to you.
I'm going over your
And
head. I'm going over your
Yeah.
head. Right.
exactly. And most defense attorneys that I've worked with will always tell their clients, do not address the jury that way. It will work against you. It will turn them against you. But unfortunately, that's always a narcissist's fall, right? The narcissist always thinks that they know better than everybody else and that they're going to be able to run the show in a successful way.
I agree. It shows the character and the way she was talking to the prosecutor, Nancy Livesay, calling her Nancy.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
And what a great comeback by Nancy. She's like, I'm sorry, have we met
do we know
outside
each
of
other?
here? Like,
I'll say this, Nancy, and that's one thing I really liked about the trial because I watched it 3 times.
Yeah.
She is an amazing prosecutor.
You can tell.
Unflappable.
Oh, amazing.
Unflappable.
And a very, very nice person. When I met her in person, I said, God, you're the sweetest, nicest person. I can't, when you see her in court, though, you don't want to be on the other side. You want her prosecuting you, but she's just a very, very nice person, very sweet. We did the interview. And I think just an excellent, excellent prosecutor. And I'm happy to be able to show her story in this and her work in this as well. And I hope people see that and give her the recognition that she deserves for that trial. She did an excellent job.
Yeah. And I'm no attorney, but I bet it was a very deliberate choice to have her cross-examine Tammy, because having a woman, asking you those questions is going to set Tammy on that defensive. And she wasn't able to hold it together, kind of postured and addressing the jury like she started off with for very long. Just having kind of another woman challenge her. Excellent choice.
Agreed. And I bet she was nervous as hell the night before. I mean,
oh yeah, of
she
course.
and Tammy was also harassing her, saying things about her online, saying that there was all these things happening in the DA's office and making her life hell for prosecuting her. I mean, am I on some list? The first thing she says, am I on some list? Is people coming after me? Imagine being a prosecutor and you're feeling threatened all the time. And here's your shot to do the cross examination, which was a huge part of that trial. And she nailed it. I think it was just amazing how, and then the way that she combated the alibi, I thought was just genius. And Tammy Moore going on 2020 the night before talking about her. I mean, who does that? Who goes on 2020 the night before explaining your alibi? Like you said, Dr. Scott, I mean, it's narcissism on another level.
It really is.
It really is. It really is.
It's narcissism to the extent that, like you pointed out so aptly, how intelligent she is.
She's not dumb though. I will. Yeah.
No, she's not stupid at all. I think she's very intelligent, and what she has been doing has been working for her for a long time, clearly. But that's one of the problems when you're working with a malignant narcissist, is that they believe their own bullshit so much that that projects out to everybody around them. Like they can fool most of the people most of the time.
Right.
But when you start believing your own BS, that's the problem. And those scenes where she's the night before and she's got the poster board in her kitchen and she's showing the timeline that she's made up. Like she's made this up. It is
You
completely
gotta write it down when
incongruent.
you made it up.
Right.
At
It's
4:01, I
incongruent
did
with the
this. At
evidence.
4:05, I did this. I mean, who remembers what they did? I mean, if I try to tell you yesterday, at exactly this minute, I did this, I couldn't remember that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh. I'm curious just about your history, your own personal history, true crime. What was the thing that like, did you have a TV show when you were a kid that was kind of your gateway drug or something that you really enjoyed that got you interested into the genre in the first place? And then um, just as a filmmaker or a director, like anyone that influenced you in terms of documentary filmmakers or true crime content creators, kind of a catch-all question, but we
I
always
love
like to know.
Jarecki. The Jinx, I thought was
Oh
the fact that
gosh.
he was able to solve the crime, and that was another person. He went to this individual. He had a feeling, or probably knew that he did it, and he was able to. I just love how he presented it. Genius. That was just the Jinx was probably. I would suggest anybody to watch that. That
Gold.
was just a
Yeah.
genius documentary. It deserved every award that it won. It was excellent journalism. It was excellent use of true crime, being able to finally put someone behind bars. I don't know if he died before he went to jail or not, but he had to pay for his crimes, and it was
Yeah.
good to see. It was good to see. So I think directly for true crime, and you can't beat him. I mean, he's just a great journalist. I mean, we all like Dateline and I really, one show that really I think influenced me the most, and I like the style, was Locked Up Abroad. I don't know if you guys
Oh,
watched.
yeah,
I
of
Oh,
love,
course.
yeah, I love that
chilling.
style of storytelling. I think it's amazing. I like how they do the reenactments. I
Mhm.
kind of modeled my reenactments after that. I don't know if you
Okay.
noticed that, but I like showing the actors. I think the actors can bring more emotion to the story versus this
Mhm.
new style where everyone shows atmospheric or on the side. They're afraid to show
Don't
people
show
say,
their face.
no, no,
Yeah,
I get it though. There's arguments for both sides. Some people
totally.
say, look, the victim doesn't, it's hard on the victims to show the full actor and it's them. And is it better if they look like the actors or don't, or the actors look like the real
Mm,
people? We don't know. But then I've heard it the other way where when use a lot of archival footage, because I spoke to, I'm actually Morgan Elvis told me this. She said there's certain pictures we don't want to show. We
course.
want to keep in whatever's
Yeah.
out there. She goes, you can use, because I had
Yeah.
to ask, what pictures can we use of Heather? What pictures can we use of you guys? We don't want to share a lot. And I asked for some more pictures and said we don't want to use these. We want to keep these for us. These pictures that we have of us and Heather, we want it to be for us. Go use actors. Go do what you want to do.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So some victims were going to say that. I understood her point after she said that. I go, yeah, it makes sense. So it depends on I think the movie, because some movies just have, you can use all archival footage. There's so much, let's say, social media stuff they have out there, or they have a lot of home videos. I mean, everyone has a camera with their phone now, so there's just
Sure.
tons of footage you can get. So it depends. But I like that Locked Up Abroad style. I really do.
Yeah, we love those older ones. I mean, even someone in the chat was talking about, Unsolved Mysteries, of course,
Oh,
and
back in the day. Oh,
Scott and
love
I always talk about City
it.
Confidential, like, those are just, like, timeless.
I think Unsolved Mysteries are coming back. Am
Oh,
I
they
right?
are.
Well, it
Yeah, they've been back
Yeah.
for a
has.
few seasons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
Netflix,
really well
but
done. Very well
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
very
Yeah.
true.
And they solved tons of crimes.
Yeah,
So you can use these to help find missing people. It's not just entertainment.
right,
It's entertainment, raising awareness for a topic, and potentially helping solve a crime.
for
So
sure.
I mean, and now if you can combine filmmaking with social media, because you can keep the story going. After someone watches the movie, they can then go online and say, hey,
Mhm.
look, I have some information or this or that, or I heard this person say that. It can really do a lot for many of these cases.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
We can't not mention our dear friend John Lorden, who you used
Yes,
in the series.
absolutely, absolutely.
How did you get connected with him and or, what kind of drew you to having his voice fill some of the narrative? Because there's so many creators out there to pull from. Why John?
He has an IT background, and I I watch his content online. So I wanted someone who was an expert in social media and in
Mm,
things with computers, online stuff, and John's an expert in that. So, and he's an expert in true crime. So he'd be perfect. So I emailed him and he emailed me right back. He goes, is the family involved in this? I go, yeah. And he goes, okay, cool. And where do you live? He lives in Minnesota. He's from Los Angeles originally, but lives in
Yep.
Minnesota. And I'm actually from Wisconsin originally. So I was like, oh, it's funny. I was like, I used to play soccer tournaments. I thought he was from Minnesota at first. And then he's like, no, I'm from LA. I'm like, oh man. I'm like, I thought you're from like a Midwestern guy like me. And so, yeah, but then I have some family lives in the Twin Cities. So I was able to visit them and do the interview with him over there. So it worked out.
Yeah, well, he was, and not just because we absolutely adore him, but, talk about somebody with ethics who has the
Absolutely.
utmost respect
Absolutely.
for building that rapport with families who really, get to trust him. Um, he's a perfect person. And then it felt, I mean, I don't know if you guys talked about this, but to me, once I learned he was a part of it and then seeing it, especially the subsequent episodes on, the online bullying and the trolling, it felt so meta to me because the last documentary he was in, the Cecil Hotel one, he really got a lot of crap online from trolls about how that was edited to kind of, um, I don't know, people started making up their own minds. I'll just leave it at that. But he felt that experience on the other end, and I thought, God, what a great project for him to be, full circle involved in. Did you know about any of that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw him. I loved that documentary,
Yeah,
Vanishing at
great.
Hotel Cecil. Oh, great. He did an excellent job in it. So yeah, I mean, he did an excellent job in our documentary as well. And he was happy to be
Sure
part
did.
of it. So
Yeah, he's pretty
worked
great.
out. Yeah. Oh, he's
So
absolutely.
what is next up for you and True Case Films? Are there other stories that you're just sort of on the edge of your seat ready to talk about or that you're passionate about? What's next?
Right now, we have a documentary that I would say we're in post production. We have most of the interviews. We're still waiting on one. It's called The Dine and Dash Dater.
Hmm.
It's a story.
Oh,
Do you
yes.
remember this guy? Okay, so it's a
Is
story.
this the LA one or the New York
LA,
one?
the LA one.
Okay. Oh,
Oh, way, way,
we need to
way
talk.
better.
We need to talk offline.
Okay, so so basically we have most of the interviews. We're still looking for a few more. I think this story really talks to the safety issues of dating apps.
Mm,
Yeah.
Given that dating apps seem to be the number one way people are meeting right now,
yeah.
it's not a murder. It's not a serial killer that was using dating apps. It was a scam. And it wasn't a scam like the Tinder swindler where he was taking hundreds of thousands of dollars from these women. He was getting a meal. So it is a little lower stakes in regards to that. However, it was so bizarre. The story was just so bizarre. And I think it was
Yeah.
very attention grabbing because it brings up who pays on a first date. It brings up the argument. I
Yeah.
don't want to say it's a dark comedy because it is a crime. There were victims involved, but I've gotten to know the victims. We interviewed them. I don't want to say they can laugh about it now, but they were pissed when it happened. They were not happy. There's a lot of victims that are still out there who would not call this at all, something to even joke about or laugh about at all. And I'm not trying to say that or put that's what we're doing, but it's lighter. No one got killed. People got scammed out of a meal. And I think it's a great story to bring awareness to the dangers of dating because there's a lot worse that can happen. There's serial killers that use dating apps. There's murders. There's
Yeah.
sexual assaults. You're meeting absolute strangers on the internet. You're 20, 21, 22-year-old girl and you really don't understand. I think when you get older, you're a little more, you can use a little more precaution. You're going to look up who the person is. You're not going to believe everything you hear. But when you're younger, I mean, oh yeah, everyone's great. Everyone's this, everyone's that. And we just go meet the stranger. So I think it brings awareness to that. I think dating apps are fine. I'm not saying, hey, look, these are just horrible, but there needs to be precautions. You have to really find out who you're going out with before you do.
Yeah,
I
that's
wish,
super
meet a complete
interesting.
stranger.
I think oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I love that you're focusing on that. One of the things in my former work with LAPD's threat management unit, one of the discussions I would have with my detective friends was that anytime there's a new technology or there's a new expression of existing technology, the first adopters are going to be the criminogenic personalities that can think that they can make a buck off of it. And what you're talking about, like, yeah, the stakes weren't extremely high. Thankfully, no
Right.
one got hurt in this
Right.
particular case. But people aren't just are really just not aware that, like, now you drive down a freeway and you get a text that, like, oh, you drove in, you just got, you were in a toll lane and you have to pay this $50 thing. That's a huge scam that's happening here in
Yeah.
Southern California
Right.
right
I
now.
get it all the time. I get the text all the time.
Yeah, and there are so many people that fall for that, because if they send out 10,000, I mean, this guy was probably swiping right over and over and over and over and over again. Here's one that's going to go to dinner with me. So yeah, it's, I wish that the general public, hopefully your production will educate more people about that.
And it's done. I think this story does a great job, and it caught a lot of attention just because it was bizarre. I mean, what guy goes out for a free meal? It's
Yeah.
bizarre. It
We'll have to
really.
have you back so we can dissect that
Please.
after it comes
Yeah.
out.
Really, I was talking to someone else about it. I mean, I want to interview him. We're looking for him. So if you're watching this, please contact us. I think the motive behind it is just everyone. I asked everyone, why was he doing this? I think the psychological analysis of this thing is great. I mean, great learning lesson. I mean,
Yeah,
it really is. Why it just.
that's
And he
it.
got away with it. It was a perfect scam because it wasn't enough money where someone's going to report it and they're embarrassed about it. So you know what? Let me
Totally.
$100. Let me just go home and just forget this ever happened. So he was able to do this for years. I mean, he was able to do this to a lot of women. And it's one of those things where if you call the police and tell them about, they're going to laugh at you. You
Yeah,
just
you
be
think they
happy.
will.
Right. And there was a detective that took it on and took it very serious and ended it. And found out who he was and all that stuff. So it's a good
Wow.
story.
We are looking forward to that, for sure. Before we let you go, tell us where people can watch the documentary and how they can follow True Case Films, anywhere, social media or what have you.
Yep. You can follow True Case Films. That's the handle either on Instagram or Facebook to watch Vanish, the Heather Elvis Case. It's on Apple TV, Amazon Prime Video, and it's also on the YouTube movies, TVOD, whatever.
Great.
So, yeah. And if you want to watch it and let us know what you think of it on social media, we'd love to hear your feedback.
Okay, I just put the website for the documentary into the chat once again. So you guys have that. You can go there and it gives you every single option of where you can watch it. Michael, thank you again so much for allowing us to um, watch the premiere of this really, really important story. And once we learned just your approach to it, we knew that this was definitely something we wanted to talk to you about because we hope
Oh,
others are
absolutely.
listening.
Mhm.
But thank you so much for your time tonight.
Oh, thank you guys very much for having me, and thank you for coming to the event. And I
Yeah.
hope you guys come to the next event for the Dine and Dash Day when that comes out, and we'll have another discussion.
Yeah,
Sounds
you're
great.
buying dinner
Thank
though.
you.
All right, you guys, thanks so much. We will see you next time on LA
Not so.
Confidential. Take care, guys. Have a good night.
Good night.
Right.
Bye. All right, I'm just gonna end the stream.